Okay, we're back on the hayfield project. I'm hoping to have this planted before the weekend so that it doesn't interfere with working on the combines, but we'll see how things go. We are at Wednesday afternoon right now. I ran up after work to the Wyckoff plant in Decatur, Michigan, where they have all their small seed and whatnot, and got a horse hay mix to go out here, which we'll talk about that more when I actually get around to planting it. But I want to drag it at least once, probably twice. Hopefully it's not too trashy and I don't plug the drag up. Otherwise I'll have to bring the field cultivator over, but I prefer to use the drag. Just because the drag will move a little bit more dirt because it's closer space, but we shall see. But I want to drag it twice. We'll let it sit this afternoon. Run a column mulcher over it tomorrow afternoon. And then Friday, my boss has a 3-point broadcast seeder. I'm gonna bring that home. We'll stick that on the 77. We'll get this, we'll broadcast it, and then one more pass over it with the column mulcher with the teeth, or with the tines just tickling the ground a little bit to kind of work it in, and then we'll be done with this project. So, but I've actually been looking for an excuse to use this drag again. This is actually, it's an Oliver model STH spring tooth harrow. See what they did there? STH, they were real clever with that one. This is actually the first piece of farm equipment I ever bought myself. I honestly can't even remember how old I was. It was before I had the 1955. I can't remember if I was in middle school. I think I bought it even before I started farming. But there was actually two, we were in a junkyard looking around, and there was actually two Oliver drags sitting right next to each other. Well, right next to each other. There was a an older 3-section with a wooden tongue and everything was complete, but the tongue was all rotten and shit, obviously because it was wood. And that was all piled on itself inside of a scrap metal dumpster. And then there was this drag, just the 2 sections that were sitting next to it on, as like an old wagon or an old truck body or something, but they were just sitting there. And it was kind of a toss-up between the two, but then, because this one didn't have a tongue, it was just the drag sections, but this one still had the Oliver decals on it. There's not really a lick of paint left on them, but they still had the decals. Well, there's still some paint on the quadrants. But near as we could tell, this drag has probably damn near never been used, because the point, or the tines still come down to a point. They're still nice and square. There's no wear on them. There's still a beveled edge on the back. Like they're basically brand new point, or brand new tines. And then there's a wear skid on the bottom of the rails that is still full thickness and is still square. It's not rounded off like it's been over a lot of ground. So this drag is basically brand new, and since I bought it, I've only pulled it over 6 acres. I used it the very first year I farmed to fit ground, and then it's been sitting ever since. Dad and I built the pipe tongue for it. Went a little overboard. That tongue is damn near as heavy as one section of the drag. But one of these days, I'd like to repaint these, just because they look sharp, and it'd be real easy. You shoot them green and put the decals on. That's obviously, I'd take it apart and clean stuff up individually and put it back together, but it would be easy because it's just green. But anyhow, hopefully we can do something here with them. I'm probably not going to run too super deep, just because I don't want to pull up a bunch of trash. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's try that and see how we do. Oh, and the other thing, very important when you're pulling a drag that you see half the people not doing. If you got a swinging drawbar, you pull the pins and let your drawbar swing. Another quick side story, because it's related to that right there. So my granddad on my mom's side, who's passed away, his uncles farmed. Actually, they farmed about 500 acres of muck down right across the road from the muck I farm. And they had, it was 5 or 6 Oliver 70s. Some were on full steel, some were on rear steel with front rubber. They liked the steel on the rear because, believe it or not, steel wheels float on muck better than rubber tires. I didn't believe it, but that's what Granddad said. So he was around back then, so he saw it first hand. I'm guessing he was right. But anyway, he was out dragging one day with one of those 70s in the 3-section drag, and his uncle always told him, when you go, I think he was like 8 or 10 years old at the time, he wasn't that old. His uncle always told him, when you get to the field, pull the pins out of the drawbar and let it swing. Well, he got to the field, didn't pull the pins out of the drawbar, and he started dragging. Well, when you drag, you work in circles. You don't go back and forth. Well, I mean, you can go back and forth, but for the most part, you work in circles. So he didn't really have any issue when he started on the outside of the field, but as he started working his way in and his turns got tighter and tighter, as the circle got smaller and smaller, it got to the point where he had to turn sharp enough. He came around one time and the wheel, or the steel wheel, came around, hit the tongue. Obviously he got lugs on the wheels, took the tongue and picked the drag up and flipped it over on top of the tractor. And luckily he was small enough and nimble enough, he got over on the clutch side of the tractor, and he was down on the axle housing, and he was able to get the tractor stopped and shut off. But at that point he was able to get himself off the tractor, but he couldn't do anything because the drag was all wadded up on top and he wasn't strong enough to get it off by himself. And obviously that was back in the days before cell phones, so we had to walk all the way back to the farm and tell his uncle he screwed up. But moral of the story is, when you're dragging, and you'll notice it when I'm doing it, but you can turn a lot shorter and the tire doesn't get anywhere near the tongue when the drawbar, like say you turn right, drawbar swings over to the right and the tire can't get into the drawbar. So when you're running a drag, you let your drawbar swing. So let's see if we make a mess or if we can actually do something. So just one notch deeper. parts done. Not gonna lie, it was a little bit of a pain in the ass. I was stopping about every round to clean the drag out, but it was still doing, well, still did a really nice job of leveling everything out. The whole reason for taking the drag over this, when you disc, a disc only moves dirt left and right, and because your discs front and back are opposite, all it does is take the same dirt and put it back in the same spot, basically. So it doesn't really do a whole lot to level out a field, and there was a bunch of yips and shit in here from all of the other work that I did, so we needed to get all them yips smoothed out. So hence you take a drag and it drags dirt. That's hence the drag. So that was the whole reason for trying to drag it or field cultivate it or whatever I ended up doing. And I really didn't want to have to bring my my 3-point field cultivator over here, because that thing tends to leave piles. It doesn't necessarily plug per se, because shit'll make it all the way through, but it likes to leave like side balls and stuff when you're field cultivating stuff like this. So then you got to deal with that while you're trying to plant it, and it tends to not work out that great. But basically what I found out, actually I kind of suspected it, but that was actually doing a really good job of cleaning the field up. It was kind of acting like a dump rake, and all of the sticks and roots and shit that I was gonna have to come back and walk through and pick up by hand, it was just kind of balling them up in the drag. And I was able to, like I say, use it like a dump rake, and I'd drag it out to the edge of the field and clean the drag out and make another round and repeat. And so it actually did a really nice job of cleaning the field up. Yeah, it was kind of a pain in the ass, but it's like, well, do you deal with the trouble of using the drag like a dump rake and clean it up 8 foot at a time, or do you come back with a field cultivator, leave a bunch of side plug piles, and still have to come back and clean all that up, and still have to walk around and pick up all the roots? So in the end, I think it was just faster to do it. I mean, yeah, it sucked having to stop every round to clean the drag out, but it cleaned the field up nice. So 6 one way, half a dozen the other. What the hell? Oh, hunk of brick. And then, so I made one pass straight, one pass at an angle, and then another pass straight. And on the very last pass, I had the tines just barely scratching. A, so I wouldn't pick anything up and plug the drag, and B, I was knocking down the drag marks, so like it's basically flat now. Good enough to run the column mulcher over it, and driving across it even in an angle, it's pretty damn smooth. And the whole point for working it down this aggressively is it's going to be hay. You don't want the field to be rougher than hell. So, but I do think I'm going to bring them, put the column mulcher behind the 4150 rather than the 1955, because I'd have to put the duals on the 1955. That way it didn't leave one deep tire track that the mulcher couldn't cover up. And down there going over that hill, it's really soft, and you get to the bottom and you're turning on a hill. And the problem I was having discing, which led to a problem that was kind of a pain in the ass to drag it out flat, was I ended up with like 4 or 5 different ruts down at the bottom of that hill from turning, and the front end digging down trying to come back up the hill. So the only way I could drag it out flat was I had to drag off the end of the field. There's a flat spot down there that I didn't work up because it's not big enough, and I could turn around on that flat spot, dump the drag, and then come drive back up to where I worked, set the drag back down, and I was able to drag them shut. But it took a minute, and I didn't work the didn't make my third pass off the end of that hill, because I didn't want to have a spot or ruts at the bottom from turning, because I finally got them leveled back out. But anyway, gonna use the 4150 because A, it won't make ruts trying to turn down there at the bottom, because you got big tires front and back, and all 8 of them are pulling, and it's on duals, so it's not going to leave deep tire tracks, so it'll float better. So it's gonna be way overkill for a 15-foot mulcher, but I think it's just a better deal all the way around. And honestly, I had thought after I got to doing the third pass on this and saw how nice it was working down, I almost thought about just go ahead and broadcasting this and then doing one pass with the mulcher at the end. But it's like I almost want to run the mulcher over it so that I can see if there's any high spots and see if I need to do any more grade work before we do the final, okay, yeah, this is ready to plant. So it's a process. There ain't nothing simple about putting in it. Well, it'd be easier if this had been farmed before and it was already level and didn't have all the bullshit going on with roots and rocks and whatnot, but is what it is. So anyway, I guess we'll be back tomorrow with the 4-wheel drive and the color mulcher and pound it out flat. All right, got to grab my key. Gonna go run the mulcher over that field for the first time today. Hopefully it lays down nice and flat and that'll be the end of it, and we can go ahead and broadcast some seed on it tomorrow and finish this job up. Might have to grab some fuel. She's a little thirsty. I was gonna fill it before I took it home anyhow. Tell you what, I had to do some soil samples today for a farm. They're putting in their last crop of green beans for the year. I think they normally get 3 crops. They normally get 2 for sure, and if weather cooperates, I think they can get 3 out of it in one season. But they wanted soil tests for their last planting. One of the fields I was at butted up to an organic soybean field. Oh my God. Talk about a breeding ground for ragweed. I mean, the ragweed, because it was integral to the field that I was sampling for the green beans, and we didn't get a whole lot of direction from the grower as to what all was getting sampled. We just knew there was 200 acres, and I had the maps, but weren't 100% sure. But anyway, I get to this field and there's a John Deere 2-track sitting there with a chisel plow hooked up, and there's this field that's just, I mean, it's a ragweed patch. I mean, the shit's easily 5-6 foot tall. And I was thinking, okay, they haven't got this field chisel plowed because they chisel plowed all the other fields I was at up to that point. And I was like, oh, maybe they were gonna start working on this one today because the tractor and the chisel plow are parked here. So I'm like, well, this could be good soil sampling and 7 foot tall giant ragweed that's pollinating. So I take off across the field and I get about 100 yards out into it trying to get my bearings because the ragweed's so tall I can't see around me. And I come out into this spot where it's a little shorter and a little sparser. It's a soybean field with, well, it's a ragweed field that they planted some soybeans in. It's like, oh my God. And this is the direction that people want agriculture to go. They must really enjoy piss poor weed control. Damn it, too far. Maybe. Maybe. Alright, I'm gonna get hooked up here so I don't gotta deal with the camera. Okay, hooking up to, well, this thing in particular, because the tongue flops when you set the wheels, or set the mulcher down. Everything goes slack, so it's kind of hard to hook this thing up with one person. But anyway, I don't want to sound like I'm putting the guy down, because I've actually got to meet him in person. I went to a meeting with him with my boss, and he's actually got a really cool farming operation. It's like, I can't remember how many thousand acres he farms. It's 100% organic. Corn, soybeans, wheat, green beans, alfalfa. He does some malt grain for a couple breweries. Potatoes. I can't remember what else. It's this whole smear of crap that is 100% organic. He got out of college. He jumped on the organic bandwagon. The thing is, he didn't jump on it because he thought that was the future. He jumped on it because you could make a lot of money at it. So he's not one of the guys that's preaching organic is the way to go. He knows there's shortfalls to it. He adopted the system. That's what he set up to do, and he makes good money at it, so that's what he does. But yeah, that soybean field, whew. I went out in it, figured out it was a soybean field, and then drove around, or got out of where I was so I wasn't trampling any beans, drove down the pivot lane to see, okay, what part of this isn't soybeans. And it was like 80 something odd acres of soybeans, and then there was like a 15 or 20 acre dork off of one side of the field that they had chisel plowed, and that was going into the green beans. So, but it was pretty bad. I don't even know. All I can say is that poor combine. Oh, girl, gonna be working. I mean, when I say ragweed, I mean, like, there were times driving back out of the field, I was going through ragweed patches, and I was like, so are these volunteer beans from something else? And this is, I honestly couldn't tell it was that bad. But I mean, the guy knows his shit. He knows, like, I'm not trying to put the guy down that runs the place. He's good at what he does. But being organic, there will be them fields they just get away from you, and there's not a whole lot you can do about it. But the cool thing is, I can't even remember how many people he employs. He's got a pretty good docket of people working for him. They are all either from South Africa or Eastern Europe, like Ukraine, that area. He has actually paid to bring them over because he can't find anybody here that's willing to do the work he's got to do. So South Africans and Ukrainians, and there might have been some other ones from bordering nations of Ukraine. But when we were up there at the meeting, he actually had one guy that was bringing his family over, but they got held up because of all the bullshit going on in Ukraine right now. So they were, I guess at that point where the guy was at, the fighting was only like 20 miles away or 20 kilometers away or whatever it would be. I can't remember what he said, but the fighting was pretty close to where the guy was at, but everybody was safe as of that point. He just couldn't get out of the country because of all the bullshit going on, so they were kind of waiting on him. But so you go around there, and it's kind of weird to hear people talking in English with very heavy Eastern European accents or very heavy South African accent. That's something that'll really throw you off, because it doesn't really sound like British English. It's weird. But they were all really, really super nice people. They were all just happy to be here. And to think there's people in this country that want to turn this country into the shitholes that those people are running away from because they're shitholes. But it's okay. Let's not listen to the people that have been there, done that. They're lying. It's not real socialism or real communism. It's something made up. So that's my spiel for today. But anyway, I finished filling this thing up and go pack that field down. Okay, we are set. All that grass we turned up yesterday with the drag is dried off again, so it shouldn't cause us too many issues. Another rock. Is that another rock? Yep, that's another rock. successful, go ahead and get after it. That's real nice, Clark. That's a piece of pipe, Clark. So much shit. That's a hunk of wood. Like, I am honestly surprised, knock on wood, that we haven't had a single tire issue out of all this with all the crap that I've found. But good thing we've been finding it with all the tillage stuff, because could you imagine hitting something like that with a mower or a baler? They tend to not like hard foreign objects. Even worse than tillage tools. Gonna have a heck of a scrap pile out of all this anyhow. But like I say, tomorrow I'm actually planting the hay for my boss. Get to run an 02 banger. I got a John Deere model FB-B grain drill. I think it's like a 9-footer. It's not quite 10 foot. And then I'm gonna have to bring an axe over here because I gotta cut off those 2 roots. There's a couple there. I tried twisting them off, they wouldn't go. But anyway, I got an old John Deere. Actually, it's a really, really nice, like, throw a coat of wax on it and take it to a show kind of deal model, that John Deere drill. And then we hooked on their old all original 2-owner John Deere 520. That way it's nice and light. Not gonna lie, I kind of like the tractor. He's a little sweetheart. It's nice and quiet. Clutch snaps in and out easy. Drives nice. I mean, the thing just runs like a little champ for a 2-cylinder. I mean, it still sounds like shit because it's a 2-cylinder, but as far as 2 cylinders go, I'll give it credit. It's pretty good little sweetheart. I should probably take the camera up there because that tractor's worth getting on. I mean, when I say honest to goodness, no lies, she's just a good honest. They're all original. They bought it from the original owner, and all the original owner did with it was plant and cultivate. That was his planting and cultivating tractor. Had a 4-row John Deere 494 planter and a set of 2-row mounted cultivators for it. So if I end up taking the camera, I might just put all of the planting videos into one video and plant my bosses and mine all in one shot. So we shall see how that turns out. But anyway, this laid down really nice. All these tufts of grass on top don't really bother me a whole lot. If nothing else, they're actually going to be a little beneficial in the fact that they'll help hold moisture when we finally get a rain. Which I'd also like to point out that, what day was it? Monday afternoon, we got an inch. Yeah, basically we got an inch of rain. Came down hard. It all came in like 35 minutes. And there was not a single washout out here for all the guys that kept telling me that I worked it too much and it's going to wash out. Because apparently they don't know how erosion works and length of slope versus grade and all that crap. Seems like, if I remember right, there's actually an equation to figure erosion factor, and I just can't remember offhand what it is. I'd have to go look it up. But you got factors like soil type, length of grade, grade itself, I think actually those are going to be the 3 main factors. Now, like, I'm not going to say that this soil type is not going to be erodible. I'm sorry I'm going off on tangents here, and I keep I've been getting comments that bugs people, and to the people that say that I talk too much, fuck you. The talking and the stories and whatnot are what keep keep the channel growing, because before I started doing the talking and growing and it was just the equipment and that was it, nothing happened. I didn't start getting, you don't start getting subscribers till you put a personality to the channel, and the stories and the talking, that's what creates the personality for the channel. So if you don't like that, fuck you, go away. But anyway, back to the story. So silt in itself is not actually that, I'm not going to say it won't erode, it most definitely will, but silt is actually more erodible by wind than by water, believe it or not, because it's a smaller soil particle. Sand is the easiest erodible by water because it's a larger soil particle. It's easier for water to pick up and transport. Silt is a small particle, it packs really easy. So silt and clay both. Now I'm not saying, just want to make that perfectly clear. I'm not saying that silt and clay won't erode. It's just harder for them to erode by water. Because, for instance, other than where a river makes a hard turn and is eroding a riverbank, strictly because of the force of the water hitting and changing direction, how often do you see a riverbed erode? Riverbeds are silt and clay. Now, where this, like, let's just take this spot right here. Where this could potentially be a problem, just follow me along here. Say we got this grade here, and then say this same grade, rather than dipping off and going down to the woods, say this grade formed a bowl and went back up the other side. And then you had your grade that goes down and dips off toward the road there. Where this could potentially be a severe erosion problem is if you had that situation where you created a bowl and then you have water running down this hill, water running down this hill. You're probably not going to see a whole lot of erosion on the hills because the water's moving too fast. It doesn't have time to pick up the soil particles. You might get a little bit of I'm trying to remember the name of you might get a little bit of sheet erosion, where you see the soil move like a couple, 2-3 inches, and creates a little teeny tiny sheets in the soil. Looks like rows of shingles going down. That's called sheet erosion. There's sheet erosion, rill erosion, which is all of the little teeny tiny, like, I guess best way to describe it's a miniature gullies, little teeny tiny rills going down. And then you got gully erosion, which is your great big huge, lose a tractor in it washouts. And then you got wind erosion. But you might see a little bit of sheet erosion on a hillside like this if left bare like this for prolonged periods of time. You won't see much gully erosion or rill erosion. But if, like I say, this formed a bowl and you had water coming down from this side and water coming down from that side, and the center of the bowl was a collection point and water ran off here, off there, and collected, and then the whole schmear ran down, you would actually be more likely to have gully erosion in the bottom of the bowl on the shallowest grade, because you have all the water collecting at that point, and basically you just have enough water to move enough soil, and because it's a shallow grade, the water is moving slow enough to pick up smaller soil particles. That's how erosion works in a nutshell. It's a lot more complicated than that, but that's the layman terms explained on YouTube, the people that don't deal with it every day type of deal. So no, I was not worried about anything up here eroding. Now, if I was going to row crop this, would I want to work at this well, the only reason it's getting worked this intensively in the first place is because it's going into hay, not getting row cropped, and because it wasn't a previously farmed field. We're starting from scratch. So that's the only reason it's getting worked as intensively as what I've done. But if I was going to say row crop this field, this would be a good candidate for either no-till or come in and just rip it every year. Don't chisel plow it or anything else. Just come in, rip it, bring the finisher in, beat it back down in the spring, and then plant it. That way, because while it looks like my ripper does a lot of damage to the soil, I mean, yeah, it screws up the soil structure if you're into that sort of thing, but it leaves all the trash on top, so you got plenty of ground cover, so the soil's not going to go anywhere from that ripper, because I've only got the little 2-inch shovels on it, so all it does is lift the ground and set it back down. But with the 20-inch spacing, it fluffs it up enough in the center that it doesn't just lay back down flat like it would, say, a straight, like for zone builder, that's just a straight ripper set on, like, say, 30-inch centers, where mine's on 20s, and it's a V ripper. But this would be, like I say, it would be a good candidate to no-till, or do a combination of, like, say, rip behind bean stubble and then no-till beans into corn stubble, for just because of how rolly this is. But anyhow, I'll quit talking so that I don't piss off all the people that just want to come see all the shit running and don't care about any of the backstory or the what's and the whys and the how's who's. Which, I guess I got a question, like, where do these people come from? Like, they come, they watch the video, they don't like all the talking, so then they feel the need to leave a comment saying how much they don't like the talking, like I'm actually gonna change the way I do the videos because one fucking idiot doesn't like it. Or, like, 1% of idiots don't fucking like it. Like, if you don't like it, just go away. I'm not asking anybody to be here. I'm not forcing anybody to be here. But, like, where do these people, did nobody just teach them that if you don't like something, you just, I don't get it. Like, if I don't like something, if I don't like a video, I don't feel the need to comment about how much I don't like the video. I just don't watch the video, or I don't keep going back to the channel. Like, it's easy. You don't need to be a dickhead about it. Just go. I don't understand these people. Of course, don't ask questions that you'll never get an answer to, I guess, is the moral of the story. But I don't get it. So anyhow, yeah, I guess we will be back tomorrow to hopefully get some seed in the ground on all this, and that will be the wrap up to the story. Well, that's it for this one. I'll catch you guys on the next one.